Welcome. Thank you for being here. I love to start our Reinvention virtual chat sessions with a little reading from the book. And of course, I am going to read from chapter 6, which is the chapter that Beth Comstock is featured in. And we're going to talk today about courage and fear. And I'm really excited to have everyone here. So let's kick this off. The courage to reinvent. Fight the fear. That's the title of the chapter. It starts with a quote from Winston Churchill. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. A small dose of courage helps with reinvention. Do you have it? Where does one find the courage to make a change? Change requires a great leap of faith to define and explore your wants and needs. When you understand that you need a change or have merely entertained the thought, the first reaction is usually fear. Fear of the unknown. Reality of some sort sets in and you quickly negate the notion that change is in the cards. You play the same mantra over and over in your head. You come up with the same excuses and you rationalize all the reasons why you can't pursue that dream, passion, relationship, career, or goal. Maybe old stories and habits are running you, and you've not managed to rewire your connection to change. But what is really stopping you? Courage is the most, I'm going to save that for later. It's a wonderful quote from Maya Angelou. There's absolutely no reason you can't create the life you want. It may take time, dedication, and focus, but you can control all of this and block fear from getting in the way. What may seem daunting or unachievable is yours with each and every step you take towards it. Every little step is a major milestone and a reason to celebrate. With a pat on the back, a glass of wine, a victory dance, it's yours, so own it. Beth Comstock, author of Imagine It Forward, Courage, Creativity, and the Power of Change, is a perfect example. She's a change maker. Her mission is to understand what's next, navigate change, and help people and organizations do the same. By cultivating the habit of seeking out new ideas, people, and places, she built a career path from storyteller to chief marketer to GE vice chair. I'm sorry, can I say that again? GE vice chair, woman. Little emphasis there. In nearly 3 decades at GE, she led efforts to accelerate new growth and innovation, initiated GE's digital and clean energy transformation, developed new businesses, and enhanced GE's brand value and inventive culture. Beth is a director at Nike, trustee of the National Geographic Society, and former board president of the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian National Design Museum. She graduated from College of William and Mary with a degree in biology. And here we are today getting to talk to Beth. So Beth, thank you again for being on here. I'm super excited to have you here. And I think the subject, and when you look at Beth's book, as a matter of fact, we are going to put in the chat here a link to Beth's webpage and where you can buy her book. It is extraordinary. You really focused in on this subject of fear and courage, and the two go hand in hand, and I love it. I love it. It's a part of my book, and we got to really connect on it. And I just want to say welcome, give you a chance to say a few words before I delve into a handful of questions. So, hi.
Hi, Kathi. Great to see you. Congratulations to you on the launch of Reinvent. The timing, unfortunately for all of us in the world, it's a bit of a reinvent moment, but it's also an opportunity. And I know you're there to help people understand how to navigate it. And I'm glad we're talking about courage and fear today, because I think we're all living through an unprecedented time of fear. So it's particularly present for most of us right now.
Right. Yeah, it's really an amazing time for us. And I think, you know, the buzzword on everybody's tip of everyone's tongue is pivot. The other is reinvent. So sadly and ironically, to have this be the timing of my book, and I had to reinvent my whole book launch strategy.
Yeah, I clearly had an event, what we're doing now.
Right. I had an event March 27th in LA. I had one scheduled April 15th in New York. We had all future things scheduled around it. But you know, that silver lining, and we just were talking before we really launched into this about, you know, having to be creative. I was planning on launching a podcast and the audiobook, and those were coming very quickly right around the launch of my book. And all of a sudden, as we started getting on these community chats and these moments, it seemed like an opportunity to really take advantage of. So these Reinvention virtual chats where, you know, we'll have anywhere from 15 to 30, 40 people joining us for a conversation has almost become like business and personal therapy for a lot of people. And I love that. I love that we're not just talking at people, but it's a chance for people to weigh in. And I encourage anybody that's on here to put questions in the chat on the right side of the screen, just so that we can address those a little bit later. But it's really great. So I'm curious, again, before I launch into any more questions, what are you finding is really resonating as far as this conversation around fear and courage? I'm sure you're having a lot of conversations with peers and friends and colleagues in the space.
Well, I mean, I think everyone is in the same situation. Often when confronted with change, it's happening to one company, one couple, one individual or a team. Now we're all faced with it. So I think people seem much more willing to talk about it and admit what's obvious. So I think that to me feels very encouraging. I know for myself, I had set up this year as a bit of my reset year. I left my company 2 years ago, put out a book, was very busy, and I said I want to give myself some time this year to step away, invest in my personal creativity after doing a lot of business creativity. I just didn't expect the whole world would hit the reset button as well. But it's scary. I mean, it's scary to have have to set up a different routine or no routine at all, to have to face into, I mean, suddenly we're all having to have very deep thought. I mean, hopefully we've all had them, but I mean, it's much more present in our face, very, you know, meta kinds of questions. And we don't have the answers to how we're going to work through this. And so I think we're all kind of in the fear phase together, which is, I think, a silver lining to what you were saying earlier.
It's, you know, you've managed to hold some really extraordinary jobs and positions, working with NBC, working with GE, and sort of rising in the ranks there to the position that you did. So were you always so confident? I mean, that's pretty some significant activity in your life.
No, I'd say I'm still not confident as I feel like I should be. I'd say now, especially just charting into new territory where I'm a beginner all over again. And I'm reminded of those times earlier. I struggled with confidence. I don't know why. There's no reason. I had great parents. I grew up in a small town that was very nurturing. And I had every reason to be launched into the world full of confidence. But the world kind of gets in your way. And I found myself working in those industries that you talk about. I had a lot of work to do to get out of my own way. I remember I had been named GE's Chief Marketing Officer, and Jeff Immelt, who was the chairman and CEO at the time, had tapped me for the job. It was about 6 months into the job. I majored in biology. I didn't have a marketing degree, although I had worked in advertising and communications. And I remember 6 months into the job, he pulled me into his office and he was like, "Hey, what's up with you? Where's your confidence? I put you in this job for a reason. What happened?" And I had this, like, my first reaction was, "Oh, darn, he figured me. He figured me out. I thought I was putting on my best Meryl Streep, and here he figured me out." And now the second reaction was, okay, I got to do something about this. And he's like, "I put you in this job because I want you to challenge things. You're creative, you have ideas, yet you come to these meetings and you don't say anything." And I was intimidated. And suddenly having, in this case, anybody, but happened to be my boss, say, "You're on the hook here." So I had him to be accountable to as well. I couldn't certainly let myself down, but I didn't want to let him down. And so I think having that accountability from him was also helpful, because he was like, I'm here, but you got to fix it.
That's a really interesting talk in the book a lot about accountability and being accountable to ourselves, but also having that accountability to other people sometimes is what helps pulls us through to something that we're trying to do. I talk about, you know, the why. Why do you want to reinvent? Why do you want to pursue some passion? Because that is the thing that pulls you through. That's almost your accountability piece. But it's really interesting because I think you're right. From the outside, anybody would say, well, you were a badass here and you've been a badass there, and now you're a badass doing this. And wow, that's one courageous, you know, fearless individual. And, you know, I guess I would ask the question that, you know, what were the moments or the catalysts or the things that sort of forced you, even personally, to sort of say, look, I got to step up and do this. And how did you do this? I know, Tammy, you talk about in your book about imposter syndrome, and it's something that is actually, it can be a really positive trait to have imposter syndrome. I mean, I've been getting up and suiting up since I was 24 years old, running my own business. And as long as I put on a suit and high heels, I felt like a serious businesswoman. You know, that is part of what I do. Even here around the house for 2 months, I get up and I put on real clothes, not sweatpants, and I walk into my quote office, which is my son's room, because that's how I show up to feel like I'm turned on for business. So were there things like that for you that helped you move from that place of fear to biting off the courage that you needed to step into certain roles?
Yeah, I think it were a couple of things. I mean, one, it was just feeling like I missed opportunities. I would, on a very simple level, I'd go to networking events, or being somewhat reserved and shy and introverted, I'd go to events and I wouldn't meet anybody, and I'd go home and I'd be like, well, what a missed opportunity. And I would go to meetings and have what I thought were great ideas, or at the very least, a question I felt needed to be asked, and I wouldn't ask it. And then someone else would ask it or pitch an idea or whatever. And I would be like, darn, I had that. And so I think just I saw too many times where I wasn't speaking up, I wasn't showing up, and I said, kind of had to talk to myself, you've got to change this. And so for me, it was really just small kind of micro steps forward, where at a networking event, I would say, okay, I'm going to go meet one person. Hi, there's Kathi. I don't know. I spy you. I'd walk over and I'd just say hi. And it didn't matter if we just said hi and walked away. I at least did it. I made the effort. I took the time. And then I'd have to sort of get out of my head and sit there and say, well, Kathy's not, what I started to realize is that you weren't sitting there, you know, you were thinking about other things. You weren't thinking about, like, why is she wearing that red jacket today, or what'd she do to her hair? And you have to get out of your own head. And I'd start to be like, well, wow, I want to learn about Kathi. I'm curious. What brings her here? What was the most interesting thing she heard in the talk today? What's the interesting trend she's seen? So I tried to turn really a mindset shift to say, I'm going to take myself out of inside my head and my own anxieties and get out of that by using my curiosity. And that's what worked for me. The second thing was just back to what you said earlier, kind of a problem to solve, a way to, I think I am an entrepreneur. I believe in a better way. I get up every day thinking, how can I make something better? And after a while, you'd start to say, well, if I'm not doing something, then I'm not contributing. And so that passion to just keep at it. There is a better way. There's got to be a better way. Again, it got me outside myself, and it allowed me to kind of do what I'd say is no is not yet. So when someone would say no, be like, no, I think you said not yet. And I try to find another way to come back. So those two things, I think, get you outside yourself, and it's it just one step builds on the other. And before you know it, your very small wins become very significant.
I love that. I love that. You know, the no, I do have a section somewhere in the book where I talk about that. Like, give me a no, and that's my, like, the go button. You know, that's the challenge, and not hearing the no, but rather the opportunity in that. And I think that that's such an important thing to be able to recognize. And the curiosity, I mean, the stories that are out there, the way people, you know, experience the world through their eyes. And again, that's something that I completely relate to. I'm always intrigued by other people's stories. And it's part of why when I set out to write this book, I thought, I'm not a reinventor per se. I mean, I am every day in my own small ways, which is really substantive. We say that reinventions come in all shapes and sizes. But I really wanted to capture other people's stories. So it was relatable, so that someone could say, wow, if she could do it, I could do it. If he could do it, I could definitely do that. And to really help people recognize those parts of themselves. I think probably everything that you're saying, everybody's probably nodding their heads and saying, I can relate to that. That is so the way I live. It's what I think. It's what I go through. I feel that way when I walk in a room. How do I get past that? For the most part, people do function that way. And, you know, I think more than ever right now, you know, we're not getting to do it inwardly. I mean, outwardly, standing in a room. So it's really easy to hide behind our computers and in our houses, because that's what we're being told to do. So how do we get people to sort of experience getting over the fear now of what they're dealing with? People that are losing jobs, that are assuming that hundreds of others are now applying for those few jobs that might exist. What would you say would be some good advice there?
Well, I think first we all have to just accept the fear is real and comes from a good place, right? I mean, and I think people can't, there's a time to mourn. Losing a job is horrible, especially if it's a job you loved. I mean, even a job you didn't love so much, you know, I mean, it's your livelihood, it's your income, there's a whole host of things. So I think give yourself a bit of time to feel bad about it. And we should all give people that space. It sucks. And then I think it depends on the kind of personality you are, but especially right now, what do you got to lose for trying different things? I am really big on a portfolio approach to just about everything. I believe you have to try a lot of different things. You have to, whatever your metaphor is, plant a lot of seeds. And so, you know, maybe there's it's like applying to college. You have your safety school, and then you have the things you're going to, you know, go crazy for. And I think it's that way right now in the job market. You kind of have your safety play, the one that will bring you, you know, the confidence, the security, but you also have to have the, but what if that doesn't happen series of plays. As somebody who lives in New York and I've been watching what's been happening all around in New York City, and I've been really impressed with what some of the restaurant people have had to do. They don't have, I mean, you've probably seen this in LA as well. I mean, they're selling bags of flour out the back door. They're selling scone kits in bakeries. They're doing all kinds of things. Now, clearly that revenue is not making up for what they had, but I guarantee you, one, it's giving them a confidence that they have the ability to try new things and that people are actually liking them. I bet many of these people discover new lines of business, new revenue streams they didn't think. And my guess is they probably will still, many of them go back to running a restaurant. That's kind of their, but so
and they're staying connected to their community, and the community will remember that, right?
So I think this, to me, this is a perfect time for reinvention. And so, yeah, go for your safety play, but also push yourself out there and just say, what if? Give yourself, well, I like to think of it as a imagination lane, an experimentation lane where you're just going to try some things out. And they're small things. It's not like you're going to, you know, announce it to, you don't have to announce it to the whole world, but just try it. You know, maybe you want to open a side hustle and just send a note out to your friends, see if they would buy something from you, or they know someone who would. I mean, there are simple ways to test these things before you have to put everything into that one play.
Right. Well, you sort of, as you said a little bit earlier, you took this time in your life after this 30-year, you know, serial career woman, right? And you had a moment where you chose to step back and you chose to, you know, really lean into, I remember a picture that you had posted of books all around you. I don't know, there must have been hundreds, right?
Yeah,
A room
hundreds.
with
I love
hundreds of
books.
books is an
Not
image
as
that I
many as
remember.
you have behind you right now, but yeah.
True, but that's, yeah, not my collection. Although I am and always have been an avid book reader and book collector. But I remember you were sort of hell-bent on, this is my kind of lean back, dig in, and read phase of my life, if I remember correctly, something of that sort. So what was that like for you, making that decision? Was it, it must have been a scary time to kind of go, okay, it's one thing to talk about it. We all say, God, wouldn't it be great if, I mean, Martin, how many years were you at Coca-Cola? 12, 20, 20, 20, yeah. 20 years at Coca-Cola. And, you know, when you dare to go, I'm going to leave, part of you is doing this giddy little happy dance, because the idea of not having to be a part of that culture every single day of your life has got to be intoxicating, right? I've never experienced it because it's always been my own thing for 31 years. But I know that it must be really exciting. And then when the reality of it, you kind of wake up that morning and go, holy cow, what did I do? What am I doing? Like, what was that moment like for you? But what kind of kept you going? Where were you starting to envision the next phase of your life, this sort of reinvention process?
Well, I left GE. I left a big company. I knew I was going to be leaving. I'd worked on the book, but I didn't expect to leave as suddenly as it happened. So that was not, the company left me before I left it.
Yeah.
So it was abrupt. And I had the book and I jumped right in. And so I might have had great pictures on Instagram saying I'm going to sit and read all these books, but I really didn't do it. I jumped right into more work because that's how I'm programmed. I think it's really only been this year, maybe a little bit toward the end of last year, that I have forced myself to run at a different speed. And it's some days amazing, many days horrifying. And, you know, days where it's like, who am I? What do I do? What do I even call myself? I remember even when I left GE, people would be like, well, how do I introduce you? And I'd be like, well, I still have a name. I just, even though I don't have a title, I have a name. And people also don't know how to deal with you. So you have to fill in the blanks. That's where, you know, being a bit of a storyteller, you have to be able to say, here's my story. But one of the things that I found in the past few months, one, just to what I said earlier, giving myself this space, somewhat not, very much not scripted. I've been trying a lot of different things. So to what I said earlier, I've been taking my own medicine, my own remedy, if you will. I try a lot of different things. I falls in three buckets. I've been really exploring writing. I've been trying all kinds of creative writing. I've been writing some poetry. I've done some experimental fiction. I'm just putting myself in different places. And I'm a horrible poet, but I really like having fun with it. I picked up a paintbrush again that I hadn't done that in probably 30 years, and a lot of visual arts, and I'm just letting it sit, and I'm reinvesting when I can in nature. And so those are ways I think are going to lead to something. But the wrestle I have with myself every day is, what's your to-do list? What are you doing this for? What do you expect to accomplish here? You know, I might want to write another book. Where is it? What's your outline? I don't know. So I'm constantly wrestling with myself. Right. And so if I have any, I guess, advice, it's just, that's part of the process, I think. And so for me, it's of discovery. And it took me 2 years to get to this point. And honestly, it's probably one of the hardest things I've done because I don't have a blueprint. It's the heart of reinvention. You don't have a blueprint. And anyone who tells you how to do it, they're going to inspire you. They might give you a few tips, but only you can do it for you.
Exactly. No, it's so wonderful. And I appreciate how honest you are about this conversation, because I think that's the big misnomer. Everybody thinks that, you know, when you've had those titles and, you know, you show up with a certain level of confidence, and, you know, the reality is we all put our pants on one leg at a time in this world. And I think anybody that's ever had to speak in front of an audience has heard that expression. You know, just imagine that. Or if you got to call the big CEO and, you know, you got to picture, they're just human beings, just like all of us. And, you know, I've probably never had an issue with that because I learned that at a very early age. But the reality is that we all have these moments. I mean, my go-to person is my sister, who I sometimes need to remind me why I'm so good at what I do. Because there are days where I think, what do I think I'm doing? You know, and I may hear it from my peers and my clients and my team. And, you know, I may know it intellectually, but I'm not feeling it. And we question and we wonder, you know, what we're doing or what we want to be doing with our lives. And I love the notion of how you've been like really tapping into those passions or exploring passions you didn't even know were passions. And I think that's the big issue. I've talked to so many folks who either were young moms returning to the workforce who had taken off a little bit of time if they had the ability to do that, or people who had stepped away from positions and now kind of going, well, now I don't even know what I love. I don't even know what my passion is. I don't even know what I'd like to delve into. And I love what you said before about having kind of parallel paths, have the, you know, the safe job. Yeah, do that. But no, you don't have to do that forever. Feel entitled to pursue and search out what that other part of your life could be. And
yeah,
maybe,
I love the way you're saying that, Kathi. I came to the point where I think I didn't always listen to that intuitive voice along the way. I think I'm an intuitive person, but to what you said, I think there, for me at least, there was there are other parts of me that need developed. Either I stopped developing them or they just emerged, and I owe it to myself to develop them. And I kind of feel like how can I not do that? And so that voice becomes so loud that you have no choice but to pick the reinvention path.
right. Well, you have the room and the space to do it because you don't have to walk into an office from 9 to 6 every day, whether, you know, whether it was 6 months ago or right now, which is the irony of what everybody's going through. And I feel like everybody's sort of in this position right now, whether it's a forced reinvention or an invited reinvention. People are sitting back with a little more time on their hands. I mean, I don't know if it's so much the case now as it was 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks ago, frankly, when it all started. I feel like, you know, there have been these like 5 stages of what we've been going through. And in the beginning, we were like, okay, never spent this much time at home and I'm not in the office. And we're kind of being told to like focus on our issues at hand, like getting groceries and taking care of bills that we may be able to defer. And all of a sudden, people had space in their calendars, if you will, to sit back. And that's where these artists started to emerge, or these great cooks started to emerge, or the home projects.
But you know, I also think maybe I also think if it doesn't emerge for you, that's okay too. Maybe like what emerged for you is you're just going to sit there and watch Netflix for 6 weeks. I don't know.
God, yes.
And I think that's also like to what you were saying. I think back, there were times I could have taken a pause. I could have hit the pause button, but I didn't have the confidence or the courage to do it. And some of the people I admire most are friends of mine who did know that about themselves. They know they needed that time. And I would go through this. I don't know if if anyone here will recognize this, but I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I'm going to take a year off. They'd be like, I'm going to take 6 months. And before you know it, I might maybe thought, well, I might take a 6-day vacation. And like, there was no reason I could not have taken 6 weeks and done something really interesting, but you get yourself psyched up. So I do think that is back to the courage. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of thing.
It's interesting because I think you're right. There are a lot of people that aren't, you know, I've said to my husband last night, I go, honey, what happens when I have to go back to the office in a few weeks and I can't make lunch in the middle of the day and I don't get to do a load of laundry on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock in between conference calls. And we were staying up the first couple of weeks. We were staying up to like 2 or 3 in the morning, like binge watching so much stuff and having the luxury of like sitting on a couch all night long for a week and being able to like watch TV and not worry about where I had to be at 8 o'clock the next morning. There was something so decadent about that. I mean, you talk about being your own taskmaster, 31 years of running a company. There's never a day off. There's never an hour off.
Really
your vacation is never a vacation. I remember being in Thailand 3 years ago, and it was 10 o'clock at night. And yes, it was beautiful. And I was in one of the most gorgeous resorts, had a glass of red wine in my hand. By God, I was on a conference call with a client and a group of people in Dallas in their offices. And I was like, well, I'd rather be here than sitting with you guys there. So I'm okay with that. But you're never really off. So there's been something a little decadent and indulgent about this where, you know, I almost feel like, you know, those sacred days of like Christmas Eve and Christmas, where you feel like the whole world has permission to have a little time off. And you can do it and know that if you don't respond to an email or a phone call or something, it's okay. So I think for the first several weeks, it kind of felt that way.
Yeah.
Now I think we've pivoted into, you know, a different workflow. But it's been such an interesting time. And, you know, look, I think fear has been, you know, struck in the heart of all of us for so many reasons. And being able to maneuver within it, around it, move through it, which, as you know, is, you know, so critical. You know, that's sort of really key. So, you know, I appreciate that we're able to have this conversation and just, you know, share a lot about, you know, what we as human beings all deal with all the time.
Right.
I'd love to open this up because it's already 12 minutes according to my clock here, past 3. I would love to open this up to questions, and I see that Brooke is asking, Brooke being the editor here on the call, of course, is asking a writing question. And I actually did have a question here myself, so I'm going to combine the two, if I may. Brooke, what inspired Beth to write her book, and how did you settle on its themes? And I'll add the rest of my question to that, which was, what was that journey like for you, that writing journey, being that still, having to make that commitment that wasn't that outward facing, you know, meeting with people kind of, you know, it's a whole other thing being when you sit to write. I know that, you know that, a few of us do here. Maybe tell us a bit about that experience.
Sure, thanks for the question. I spent a lot of time at GE working with early to mid-career managers in the company. And a lot of our conversations about innovation and change. And I kept having these similar conversations where it ended up being about risk-taking and empowerment, and how do you give yourself permission? And I almost called the book Permission Granted instead of Imagine It Forward. But in the end, so at the heart of it is, I wrote the book for people just in the middle of their career or the middle of the organization, who so much is expected in organizations, yet so few resources and time are given. So I just saw this firsthand, and I took myself back to when I was in the middle of my career, the middle of the organization, and, you know, where did I go wrong? Where did I learn? And so I just tried to pull that in with this basic premise of, it's about the permission you give yourself to try things, to take risks, to find champions, to bet on yourself. And also at the same time, just a firm belief that in making, you know, we get up every day to make the world better, to make our workplace better, to make ourselves better. So I'm just a big personal development person, and I wanted to pull in examples from other people. And so what I ended up doing with the book is I wrote a somewhat personal book. It's a very different kind of business book. It's very personal. And I shared what went wrong, not just what went right. I offer some challenges, so people, almost like little exercises. I was inspired a lot by Twyla Tharp, her book, Creative Habit,
Wow.
which I love, which gives you little exercises. So that's what's behind the book. And I found it incredibly difficult to write the book. I had a co-writer because he had helped write other people write books. That was a confidence I didn't have. Again, maybe one of the reasons why I might write another book, to say, okay, now I've learned, maybe I could do that on my own. But I needed that collaboration and partnership to do that. And I'm glad I did, because he helped make it a lot better and had a great editor as well.
Yeah, I feel that way about having Brooke in my life. I'd written probably at that point 7 some odd years of content and materials and blogs and all kinds of stuff that had been out there. So I'd already, you know, I'd probably minimized my risk a little bit, in that I was getting a lot of feedback to the content and sort of knew I was taking it in a direction where there was interest and people were responding to it. But then I had like, you know, years of stuff and a bunch of ideas for chapter headings. And I was able to hand it all to Brooke and go, here you go. Make some sense out of this. And having that
you're
partner,
too close to it, right? It
yeah.
is, that partner is critical. Anyone who says they've written their own book, it's not true. You need that collaboration.
Exactly. Marvin's written a book. He's nodding.
No, I actually
Tammy's
had a
written
question, but thank you.
Well, go ahead. Since we're hearing you, go for it, Marvin. And then we've got another one from Lauren. So
thank you. Thanks, Beth. Really appreciate your time. And Kathi, when you said you had to think about if you were doing something and how good you were, so I fainted so that I took my video off. Then I revived myself thinking, if Kathi said this, I'm a mess. But now I feel good again. So
okay.
Beth, you said something that was really interesting when you said you had to begin all over again. There's some people like, you know, you go 5 rungs and all you gotta do is just jump down. You beginning all over again, you're like at the top of the Empire State Building. So when you said you begin all over again, do you like go all the way down to the lobby and start over? Or do you go like?
That's part of my, I'm learning that's part of my process. I'm curious. I love to discover. I'm really like, what's new, what's next. So I love that. But I'll give you an example. Like I wasn't one of those kids growing up who was into poetry. I wasn't particularly angsty. I missed that stage. And I just decided I found a class that was about using poetry to unlock creativity. It was me and 15, 20-year-olds. Okay, I'm not, if you notice, I'm not 20. It's been a while since I was 20. I mean, that's embarrassing. That's horrifying. That's liberating. And so every week it was me and 15, 20-year-olds. And, you know, they were much more mature in their poetry than I was. So they don't know what I've done. They think I'm Elizabeth. They don't even think my name's Beth, right? So that willingness, that I learn is part of my process to go just sort of strip it away. How am I going to learn? But it's also accepting that it feels very uncomfortable. It feels very, raw. I kind of need
right?
that. Yeah, the rawness of it. So Marvin, I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm a big believer in a beginner's mind as part of a process for kind of unlocking things. But I think you have to be really honest with yourself about what that means, and everybody has different tolerances of how they want to think about that.
You know, it's interesting because Lauren asked a question which I think sort of plays in that same space. She's asking, did you feel you were at a disadvantage or an advantage as an executive of a Fortune 500 company? So, you know, that's a really, sorry, go on, Lauren.
I was actually meaning to say, if you are feeling as at a disadvantage or an advantage being a female executive of a Fortune.
Even better. Sorry. Thank you for correcting that.
Yeah, that one word is key.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks, Lauren. You know, it's a bit of both. I am a woman. I navigated my world as a woman. I mean, it wasn't any easier in media, which I think people might find surprising. I mean, but so that was just always who I was. It was more profound, I think, earlier in my career than it's like anything, you know, you sort of work your way through it. But one, you're building confidence and you're getting the recognition. So I think that helps. But I not only was a woman, I was in more creative pursuits. So I was certainly at GE, which is an industrial and technology company. I was a marketer with a bunch of engineers. They were either financial engineers or mechanical engineers. They didn't know what to do with the creative marketer. So I was a bit of a weirdo in that respect. I was a woman. And when I was at GE, I came from media. I didn't come from a traditional background. And so, yeah, I felt a little bit of both. What I came to appreciate, and it was not like I just woke up and said, I'm going to feel this way, but I started to feel that, hey, this is a secret power here that I can tap into. Being different actually is a competitive advantage. And let me tell you how I would exhibit that. And this is such a silly story, but I think it'll resonate. I like wore kind of crazier clothes. I mean, certainly at GE, all the guys wore the same thing. They all wore khakis and sweater vests for golfing. I don't golf and I'm not wearing khakis. So I would wear kind of funky shoes. And I remember once I went to do one of these sessions I was talking about to Brooke, where every month I would go and do a class with our early managers. And I guess one time I wore white pants. And I don't know if my pants were too tight or it was like October and it was past Labor Day or something. But in the reviews, someone wrote, "I can't believe Beth wore white pants." And the HR person didn't filter them out, which I was fine with, but they usually do. And I was like, damn it, I am going to wear white pants every chance I get. So out of that kind of, it brought out something in me I didn't know I had. So it became a bit of a power, like, I'm going to use that difference. I'm going to wear white pants every day if I feel like it. I'm going to wear my
Which
shoes.
became probably a metaphor for a lot of behavior at that point,
it did.
right?
And my shoes, people would call them my weapons of mass destruction. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to own these. So that's how but it's a tough journey there. And I don't want you to think like every day. I mean, there were days when I wanted to put on the khakis and the sweater vest, thinking it would be much easier to just not have to stand out that way. But it became a bit of a rallying cry, and it brought out a rebel in me I didn't know that I was.
I love that. I love how you leaned into that. It's probably something I completely 100% relate to. And people on this call like Marvin and Marla, who've known me for a very long time, you know, convention was hardly my thing. I've never worn a conventional business suit to a meeting, no matter how serious the meeting was. But there's always like the pop of the crazy jewelry, or, you know, right, Marmart's smiling because when we handled the World Cup soccer, I had to put shoulder pads in my World Cup Soccer 94 t-shirts because God forbid I wear a t-shirt the way anybody else wear a t-shirt, right? So Marvin and Mart can both relate to having seen me in that condition. But I think there is something special, and God knows, is that not a lesson for so many young people going forward? That, you know, being different is special and unique, and those attributes are what do make you special, you know? And so I love hearing about the rebel in you, Beth. It's great.
Quiet rebel, a kind of quiet, with a small voice rebel.
Beth, yeah. I'm involved with Halogen Ventures. Do you know Halogen Ventures?
I've heard of them. I don't really
Jesse
know.
Draper's fund.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I'm also an advisor to the fund and an LP. And we've got great female-founded companies in the consumer technology space. Just wondering if you're open to look at, not as an investor, open to look at opportunities for your next thing, maybe within the fund, or to advise some of the companies, or being a board member. Is this something that you are open
possibly
to?
I mean, I've stayed, I'm on a public board. I've stayed, I do advise, I'm a LP in a couple funds, but I do advise, especially women founders who I've just been fans of or gotten to know. So yeah, I mean, it depends on life and where things are, but yeah, I'm always, especially a great founder, I get as much out of it as anything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely open.
Me too.
Thank you too much.
That's great.
Okay,
Tammy, you're doing some amazing things.
Thank you.
And every time I look on social media, I'm seeing something new that I didn't know you were doing. So it's really fun.
I like to surprise people.
You
and
do
myself.
You do it. But that's great. Well, are there any other questions? I know we're getting to the end of the hour. We try to stay between 45 minutes to an hour on these conversations. Anybody have any other questions? Yes, Marvin?
And my one question for, like, actually, I guess it's for all the women, but because of, you know, where Beth has started and where she's landed now, there's so many young women now that are about the comparison culture, but they're comparing themselves to people that are not as, I'd say, healthy and successful as this group. How do you speak to the people that are literally just paying attention to social media and thinking that world will evolve into some kind of a business when you've literally like tackled corporate America?
Well, that's I might ask you to answer that as well. Because I think that's, well, I'll tell you one thing. In the past 5 months, 6 months, I have really myself pulled back on social media. I've just, I'll post a few things every now and then, and I did a lot of it when I was in GE, did a lot around the book. I just felt, to what you're saying, I needed to stop comparing myself to what other people were doing. We all do it. I don't care where you are, what you've done. We all look at other people and you think, they look so happy right now. Why do I feel so miserable? Or how did they pull that off? Or for me, it's getting in my head. So I think you have to know that about yourself. Now, other people, they love it. It gives them energy. That's the way they are. And I think you have to know that about yourself and kind of have the courage to say, that's not right for me right now. It's back to just being a good marketer. I mean, what's a good marketer? You learn about marketing. What's your unique value proposition? How do you express yourself that's kind of true to your brand, to your way? And not everybody can follow the same blueprint. So I don't know, how would you answer that one, Marvin?
You're talking to somebody that was raised from the time whatever to when I was with my mom, I could be myself. And I was always taught to be myself. Is sometimes as disastrous the results were, but at least she knew that it was always me doing it and not somebody else convincing me to do something. So my biggest, I guess you could say, statement, neon sign is be authentic, because you can only be, the best thing you can do is be you. I can't be Kathi, I can't be Beth, I can't be Tammy. I can follow you guys and I can learn from you guys and I can be a good listener and a good gleaner of information. But if I literally try and capture your essence and duplicate it, which is what's dangerous about social media, they have no idea what it took you guys to get to where you got to. They just look at where you are.
Well, and I think social media has that effect because people clearly are only posting the great parts of their life, not the hard work, not the late nights that, you're staying up working hard, not the challenges, not the fights you have with your peers, your spouses, your boss, clearly, that's what, social media. And I think the sooner that young people that, just to go back to, what do you tell the young people? That's not reality. That's like a television show, that get in front of people, bring mentors into your life that are really practical and related to what it is that you're interested in doing.
Kathi, I mean, one of the things you're saying, I think, just to add to, I think Marvin used that word teacher, you use mentor. I mean, you don't have to have a relationship, a personal one-on-one. There are lessons you can learn from everyone. And even if somebody bugs you, I think it's an opportunity to say, why is that bugging me? What is it that I don't want to do? Or what is it that I maybe don't feel comfortable about what they're doing? And how might I do it differently? So anyway, I just wanted to reiterate those two words, teacher and mentor.
I mean, I think that's why in my book, I ended up just coming clean, because I felt like even while I was writing everything that I did great at, I started to think this is boring and it's not even true how I'm feeling, and why my book became half of it is all through my eyes and my shit and insecurities. And being able to fight through that to become successful and just barfed it out instead. So, because it just didn't feel like at the end of the day, what you were saying, Marvin, like that authentic, I wasn't even being true to myself. If I was just writing just the stuff I was good at when everything else was eating at me.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in truth. And I think that the kids that are growing up in today's society aren't getting to understand that as much, but I do think it's a great lesson for us to learn. Ironically, talking to someone like James Orsini, who was one of the adults at the adult daycare center, as we call it at Vayner, and Beth, I know you know the team over there very well, incredible smart people, but they really needed some adults to supervise and bring strategy and gravitas and knowledge to the 800 millennials that were running around there, to create the structure and, really integrate into a company that could do great and new and innovative things. So having that balance and helping young people understand the value proposition, is super important. I think we're going to see such an interesting evolution now too, as we look at the workplace and look at opportunities, and, you know, kids who can't get, you know, graduate in the traditional way, and the job market isn't what they thought it was. I mean, how many interns I was going to have working for us this summer who now can't do the same internship job and have that day-to-day, face-to-face, next to us experience. Yeah, there's work to do, but is that the same experience? I mean, all these things that come up now. I feel like we could do a whole hour on that, but it's 3:30 and I want to be very sensitive to everybody's time. I'm so grateful, Beth, for this conversation.
Thank you, Kathi.